Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, and thanks for joining me for episode 2. Today I'm excited to share with you the first of many interviews with nature journalers. I'm speaking today with my dear friend Jules Woolford. Jules is the pencil and paintbrush behind Drawn into Nature. She keeps an illustrated nature journal of her experiences connecting with nature in her patch, which is in Bristol, England. She spent her professional life in the environmental sector working on projects connecting people with nature. And now she uses nature journaling to continue this work, helping others discover the wonders of our world in the everyday things we can find close to home. Hi Jules, and welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi Bethan, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very excited about this.
I'm excited too. So you and I met, funnily, through Instagram. We were admirers of each other's pictures on Instagram, and our friendship just started from there. What was your experience on the other side of that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much knocked the nail on the head. I would say it was like a mutual admiration society on Instagram, wasn't it? And I think we exchanged a few sort of messages behind the scenes, and probably got this perception of the other person, as you do, as this completely different person to how they really were. And then you reached out to me a little bit later with an email, and the rest is history.
Yes, and that email was a little lifeline. I was asking you, I had this big idea and I was asking you, is this possible? Is this something that we should go forward with? And that was that I had the idea to start International Nature Journaling Week. And you said, yes, go for it. Let's do it. And from there, we, as a team, developed International Nature Journaling Week. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience and a wonderful, wonderful success. And the most beautiful thing for me that came out of that was that we deepened and developed this amazing friendship.
Yes, it was absolutely incredible. It was a very unusual way, I suppose, to further our friendship, and we were certainly in the thick of it together, behind the scenes that nobody knew. But it was such a wonderful experience, and I was so delighted that you, first of all, when you reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in helping you, and never imagining how successful it was going to be. I don't think either of us had any idea that it was going to take off.
Not at all.
Which was wonderful, but yes, it's been lovely, and that's sort of pushed the way forward into so many new things. But yeah, the important thing for me, I think most important, was making the connections and making the connection with you, and that's led us both on to lots of new things and sharing things as well. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that International Nature Journaling Week was such a success in that there was people from all across the world, in fact 94 countries, people from 94 countries viewed the website, and countless people posted things on social media that they had done in response to that week. And that it was such a big event showed me just how much people need nature in their lives. That was what I took away from the event itself. What was your big takeaway from International Nature Journaling Week?
I think I was surprised at the amount of people who got involved and wanted to help, and it was just incredible. Because I always thought, we're quite a niche little bubble, nature journalists, but my goodness, what we lack in numbers, we make up for in our enthusiasm, passion, and commitment. And that was just mind-blowing for me. People sort of getting in touch. I didn't know them, with lovely messages and offers of help and support and wanting to do things, and all because of their commitment and love of nature, and also wanting to connect with other people who were like-minded. But it was so positive. It was just lovely. It was so so uplifting, even in the middle of everything going wrong behind the scenes. You know, you'd suddenly get a message or, oh my goodness, that's incredible. You know, no, nature journalists, I have to say that we are a flipping amazing bunch. We're pretty fantastic.
That's wonderful. I love that so
And we're
much.
lovely people.
Yeah, there was so much warmth behind the whole thing, the response. Really, really a lot of warmth and a lot of care and a lot of love and support. That was really wonderful. But for me, your input was absolutely key. And right from the beginning, when I sent you that email and you said, yes, go for it, we can do this, you helped all the way through. And it was your bouncing ideas off you and support at 2 a.m. in the morning when we had long nights and organizing things. Your support was absolutely pivotal for the whole week's success and your feeling like this can be done. That was for me such an amazing and important key in the whole thing.
Well, I think it's, you know, you were in the thick of it with the website and everything. It was easy. I could cheerlead, you know, quite quite easy from the sidelines. But yeah, I think, you know, I was glad I was there. I was glad I was there to, you know, to help you and give you a bit of a lift when things were challenging. 'Cause there were quite a few challenges along the way, I think, for both of us.
You're right, things we hadn't expected. And you and I have already started planning for next year. We're having meetings about it, and
Yes, very
there's
exciting.
going to be lots of exciting things.
Yep, absolutely. And there's obviously no spoilers, but yeah, everyone needs to keep their eyes and ears open for what's going to be happening. It's going to be even more amazing, I'm sure, than it was this year.
So I want to talk about your work. You have a beautiful style. Your style is so gentle and it's very quintessentially of the English countryside. And you have some very strong influences. Do you want to talk about your influences first?
Mm-hmm.
Influences that started you off on this whole journey?
Yes, absolutely. This is going back a long, long time, but sort of back in the 1980s, I think the Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady came out, and I just looked at this and I just thought, I love this. I love what this lady did. I love her art. I love her passion and interest in nature and how she just simply put it all down. And I was also a huge fan many years of Beatrix Potter and her early work as a mycologist, and having been up to the Lake District and seen her original works and writings. And the other person that also inspired me was the artist Marianne North, coming from a different direction, as she was also obviously an oil painter, travelled the world. But it was a kind of these women that had gone out and done something that was not regular, even nice little paintings perhaps, but no, they were more than that. They showed their knowledge and love of the natural world, and I just thought, this is amazing. I would love to do that. I want to keep a nature journal. And I always painted and drew since, you know, I was tiny, but I couldn't possibly do that because I am not an artist. You know, this is something that I would just dream about. I couldn't possibly actually do it because I'd never be good at it. But those three particular people have always been the main people that inspired me, and how I thought, if I ever kept a journal, that's how I would like it to be, that kind of traditional style. And that's what I sort of think I do. It's traditional with hopefully a bit more of a slightly contemporary twist, but it's pretty much, I draw the pictures, I paint the pictures, I write the words. I you know, it's pretty bog standard, really. Pretty basic.
You say that, but you have a style that is, for me, having come to know your work, it's instantly recognizable. When I see your work posted online, before I see your name, I know it's you because it's very much you. And that style has developed over time, hasn't it? Can you talk about how you've come into this style? You use pencil and use watercolor and you use words and stories, and you haven't always done that, have you? You started off as an urban sketcher before a nature journaler?
Yes, yeah, I've had I've had quite a long journey with art, but as far as the sketching comes, the style has evolved. It just kind of one day it just sort of happened after years, and I spent a lot of time trying different things, trying different media and trying different ways of working, and it was nice and it was fun. I learned a lot, but it just it just didn't work. And the odd thing is when I first started to know that I wanted to actually draw and paint, I'm going to say seriously again as a hobby, was probably back around the late 1990s, and I started then with pencil and watercolor. So I've actually come back full circle, though I would say my work now is very, very different than it was then. But it's funny that I sort of did the full circuit.
Yeah.
I started to do that, and I used to do very detailed work, spend hours and hours poring laboriously over something, and because I do love details, I like the detail in my little stories are my thing. And then I had this kind of blip with life where I lost confidence, which some people that know me will know that I've had various blips like this, and confidence with life and with my art. But then about 2012, I had started to paint and draw again for my embroidery design that I was doing, because I was working in textiles, but far too scared to actually do proper drawing and painting that anybody could see, because that would be not acceptable, because I still had this strange idea, as we did then, that you had to be born a talented artist, and before I'd actually realised that it's just a skill like driving a car or riding a bike or swimming. You just learn to do it and you develop your skill. But I got involved with the concept of journaling through a wonderful artist called Kathy Johnson, who's an American artist.
I love her so much.
Super, absolutely wonderful. She has done many, many books, but she'd written a book called The Artist Journal Workshop, and it's an artist journal workshop. So I'm keeping an illustrated journal, and it was a book based around that, with lots and lots of examples from journal keepers all over the world in different styles and techniques, ways of working, basically saying it's up to you. And this completely blew me away. I thought it was wonderful, and I discovered that there was a Facebook group that she'd started. I think there were about 200 of us in the beginning. There's I don't know how many thousand people there are in that group now, but I joined that, and people were so supportive and encouraging and lovely that I began to join in and start journaling lots and lots of different things. And through that, I sort of got more confidence. I came into contact with Urban Sketches through Urban Sketches Singapore, where we were going for a couple of weeks, and they were just amazing people that welcomed us so much, and I had a fantastic experience out there, again, which boosted my confidence no end.
That's beautiful.
Doing something different. So when I came back, I started a Bristol Urban Sketches group with a friend of mine. But I knew by then what I really, really wanted to do was do what I always wanted, was to record the world around me. I spent a long time as a career, in my career as an environmentalist for 25 years plus, linking people with opportunities to enjoy the natural world. So it just seemed a natural progression to try and use the Nature Journal to do that, in a different way, and get people to be involved with art and also writing, and connect with nature on a more deep level through that process.
So you said that you had a lot of inner criticism, self-criticism about, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I don't have the talent to do this. And now in your work with Drawn into Nature, you're often coming into contact with people who say, I'd love to do a nature journal, but of course I can't, because I can't draw, it's not in me. So how do you, when someone comes to you and say, I'd love to keep a nature journal, but I can't because I'm not an artist, what do you tell them?
The first thing I say is it's the most common thing that you hear, because we are in this little niche bubble. If art, nature. Probably we have friends who may also be creative. And if you're in that bubble, you tend to think that the rest of the population is exactly the same. But I would say 99% of the population doesn't draw, doesn't do anything creative in that sense. And so what we see is something quite straightforward. It's like some kind of insurmountable task. First thing I say is that anybody can draw. You can write your name. You can draw. It's having the will to want to do it, practice, patience, and perseverance. But the most important thing is wanting to do it, because it's like anything else. If you don't, you can't be Michelangelo in 5 minutes, but you can do it.
Yes.
And it's the most wonderful journey if you decide to take it. And if you are somebody who loves nature, I think we are in the most privileged position ever, because you naturally want to stop and observe and look deeper and connect, because that's the sort of person that you are. So the next stage to picking up a pencil or a pen and actually looking and making marks is so much easier, because you're halfway there. You've got the will to want to observe and connect with your subject, which is so important, and that people don't, I think non-artists often don't quite grasp this. And I've taught quite a few people now who've wanted to start a journal, including, I'm very proud to say, a friend who is a professional artist, but was coming from a completely different kind of approach. But it's so wonderful because you're mixing up disciplines that you would never normally do. But people bring such interesting aspects of what they do into the process. And I've noticed that more than when I've just sort of, taught somebody how to draw. But using nature to me is just such a wonderful focus. You're right in there.
Yeah, and it melds so well with self-care, being still and being outdoors and connecting with nature is just so good for you and good for your heart and good for your soul, as well as just being a fun thing to do.
Absolutely. Well, as you know, my website is there's a whole kind of piece about that, because health and well-being is so important now, and and getting outside. But when you're taking it to another level, that's even more amazing. As you know yourself, Bethan, you can be drawing some leaves on a plant, and you'll suddenly realise that actually 20 minutes went by, and you're just there.
Yes.
You're just completely in there, and it's just so wonderful. And when somebody has done that in a class or a session with you, and they look up and you see this expression on their face, it's just so wonderful. Particularly when they've come in being a little bit nervous and I can't do this, I'm going to be awful. Well, I can say, look, I failed my art O-level exam in England. Which is one we take at 16. And I thought I was a complete failure on the scrap heap of life as far as art was concerned. I was useless and awful. Well, if I can do it, believe me, you can. Anybody can. It's just, having that desire in the first place is so important. And I think getting people excited and enthusiastic and taking small steps is really the way to kind of get in. It's not to worry about doing everything at once, just taking baby steps, going stage by stage, and just thinking about what you are doing. And that helps with all the process, with looking at the environment, with your mental health and well-being, and with the creative process as well. So
absolutely, that's really good advice, taking things step by step. And it's easy when you see people who have been journaling for a very long time and have very elaborate journal pages to get intimidated by that or think I can't do that. But just starting at the beginning and, like you say, going step by step and taking it as a chance to learn about yourself and about nature and to take some downtime and all that good stuff is the point of it, isn't it? It's not, the point isn't to, as John Muir says all the time, it's not to make pretty pictures.
Absolutely. And I think, I've done this myself. Like there are many journalists that I look at their work and I think, oh my goodness, wow, that is amazing. I could never do that beautiful script or how they set a page out. Oh, what mind blowing. But it actually it doesn't matter because it's about the journey. It's always about the journey and not the destination. And you could set out the most beautiful page ever, and you could have been so happy with it. But if I actually didn't learn anything about that flower or
Yes.
that creature, or I missed it. And sometimes you can get too bound up in worrying about that.
Yeah, then it's an art exercise and not a chance to connect with nature necessarily.
I said when I started out, I was very much worried about not having things perfect, not having things right, and I couldn't show people because it wouldn't be right. And that's why urban sketches helped a lot and learning to draw quickly. So now if I do a journal spread, it won't take me more than a couple of hours. And by that I mean it has to. That's from putting everything down and painting and writing. And often that involves me doing a bit of research. If I don't know about something, I want to go back and check out, well, I've seen this new insect, beetle, for example, I need to go and find out about that. So I won't, because it's important to me. There is so much more I want to journal. And I know that I've got better. At one time, I couldn't have even thought of doing that quickly. It would have been impossible. But it's just because I practice that I'm able to do it much more quickly. I mean, I look at natural history illustrators with their exquisite work, spending ages and ages on one aspect of a drawing. It's mind-blowing. I love it. But for me now, it's just like, yep, on to the next flower.
Yes,
Because I just want to get as much in as I can.
yes, and there's so much joy and life and beauty in your pages. They're just full of butterflies and flowers and deer and rabbits, and I just love looking at your work. It's so
Thank you.
uplifting, it really is.
But it's really just very ordinary. I mean, as you know, I don't live in a national park. I live in a very workaday area. That my patch is at an ex landfill tip. But that's the thing. There is so much beauty and wonder all around. On the grass verge at the side of the road. It's learning to look at the world in a different way. And instead of seeing that
Yes,
patch of weeds over there, you're actually thinking, oh my goodness, is that a scabious? It's you'll probably people will probably sort of kind of know this. You're out on a walk and you'll see somebody else and you'll spot something because you're interested, and they're just walking past it. And they haven't seen that buzzard flying overhead because they don't know what it is. If they knew, I find this, people just go, oh wow, we didn't know that. We didn't know it was there. We didn't expect to see it. But again, with the nature lover's hat on, where you are usually going, ooh, what's this? What that? Is there something I can pick up and put in my pocket? We have this mindset that is just great. So I say, if you're a nature lover, you can so easily become a nature journaler.
I love that. In fact, you touched on something I was going to ask you, which is that because I know that people have barriers to becoming nature journalers, and often they say to you, I'd like to nature journal, but I can't because I can't draw. Or the other thing that they say to you is, I can't get to nature. And people have this idea that there's nature out there in a national park or somewhere away from them. And you wrote an amazing blog post about changing the nature mindset. Can you talk a little bit about that? Well, I guess you've touched on it already, about seeing nature in the everyday, and we don't have to think of nature as somewhere out there in a national park that you'll visit once in a lifetime or something, that nature is actually everywhere, all around us.
Absolutely. Well, I'm afraid this is another one of my soapbox things, really, but
Please do, go.
having spent such a long career trying to connect people with nature and the environment, it's interesting concept that a lot of people who are not so in touch with the natural world, there is still this kind of preconception that you have to turn on the TV and watch a David Attenborough documentary, and they're going, maybe going to Rwanda and looking at gorillas or something. It actually there might be a butterfly flying past the window, or or the clouds might be doing something strange. And it is about changing the way that you look at things and the way that you look at the world. And I've had people at various times say, well, I can't go out. I'm talking pre-COVID, but someone who has it has an ability that means that they're unable to leave their home. So I'm thinking of one lady in particular, and I could sense that she wanted to do it, but she was perhaps being a little bit negative about it. So I said, well, what's your home like? Have you got a garden? Yes. Can you see it? Yes, I can see into the garden. So we talked a bit about that. And she, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And I said, friends and family are visiting. I said, do you get friends and family to collect things and bring them for you? I had an artist friend of mine used to get people to bring her all sorts of things so that she could draw them in. And she said, oh, that's a wonderful idea. And then, she had a computer. She was fortunate, so she was able to identify things and get books. But it was interesting because once she'd realised that there was a never-ending supply of nature available to her, she reacted in a completely different way. But I think it's very easy to say, oh, well, I live so-and-so. We don't, there's no park, there's no nothing. I can't get there. But you go out of your front door and there's a crack in the pavement and there'll be a plant growing.
Yes, and the sky is accessible to most people.
Absolutely.
And the sky is infinitely variable and infinitely interesting and deep, and all the things you can learn from the clouds and the movement of the sun and all that stuff.
And often full of birds.
Birds, yeah.
And I have to say, in these days, of course, where we've learned to be quite adaptable, there is a wonderful world of webcams where you can pretty much watch any kind of animal and landscape cameras as well. There are some places that have got cameras set up so that you can see the landscape around a particular castle or something. There was just so much there. So we are incredibly lucky.
Yeah, especially if you're locked down with COVID or if you have a disability and you can't get out. What's your favourite webcam to access? What have you seen?
Oh my goodness, there are just so many. I have a friend who is the queen of webcams. She's an illustrator and she's always sending me. In fact, she should do a book or something. She's amazing. I think the one I've enjoyed most was doing an eagle's nest it was somewhere up in North America, and it was a fantastic situation because they'd had their chicks and and mum was on the nest. And the camera was in such a great position that you could just see the wind was blowing through their feathers, and it was just incredible. It's almost like you were there.
Yeah, that's so good. There's a lady on Instagram who does bears. I'm not sure where she's looking, maybe in Canada, but she does bears all the time, and she has names for them all, and she follows them, and she follows the growth of their cubs and everything. It's amazing to see her journal spreads with bears.
Wonderful. To check that out. That sounds great. But we are very fortunate to have these additional things, and if the worst comes to the worst, you go to the kitchen, open your refrigerator, and go to your fruit and veggie tray, or
absolutely,
or you take, you buy a new house plant, or you cut it. There's so much. We even if we think you're completely cut off from nature, you'll probably find that you could go into your home and find so many things that you hadn't actually considered would be interesting. And once you realise that they're interesting and full of wonder, then you look at them differently.
Yeah. I did a journal page from my fridge.
Oh, you did? That was great. Yeah, that was a really, really good example of something that we don't, we eat the veg. Oh, I could have drawn it. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I looked at the broccoli and cauliflower with my microscope and drew those magnified views, and it was really, really fun. And I went to a school recently and did a nature journaling workshop with the kids, and I said, nature journaling is about looking at the world deeply and observing closely, and even looking at things that are familiar to you with new eyes. as if it's new to you. And I showed them this page of journaling in my refrigerator, and the kids thought it was hilarious because I had a picture of a moldy mung bean and other stuff, but it made them all laugh, which was fun.
Well, that's great. And I mean, it's like looking at the compost bin, isn't it? If you
Yes.
ideal for kids, like looking through Moldenberg. And I had a lovely experience with my great nieces, and we were on a visit back last year, and my brother has a big garden with an oak tree, lovely oak tree. So there's always lots of acorns and things, and there were lots of fallen twigs with lichen on them. And so I said to the girls, have you seen the lichen bloom? What? So I took the lichen over, and we got some a bucket of water, and put in, and they realised the magic when you put the lichen in water and it got wet, like when it rains. That suddenly the colours become alive and it's bursting and beautiful, and it was just fantastic to see their response to this. And I was so chuffed the other day when my eldest great niece said to me, Auntie Jules, I remember about the lichen. I always remember.
Oh, it really touched her. That's beautiful.
I put it in my blog because I was so chuffed that I thought she's got that memory, and they're very nature families, but that for me was wonderful that she'd associate that. And she'd remembered that we had this, revelation, really, that wow, this is like magic, because nature is magic.
Yes, that is so good. And I think that that's what it's all about. It's those moments of wonder that sink really deeply into you, that you carry with you going forward.
Yes, because I'm sure you feel the same, that there'll be those moments that you've had in your life, even though, you love nature and you're looking at it all the time. There are those sort of kind of standout moments and it doesn't have to be something particularly, I spotted a rare creature. It's just something that made you go, oh, and they stay with you, and you remember.
Yeah.
And if you're able to get them into your journal and actually sketch on the spot, that's incredible, because you never have another feeling or memory like that.
Yes.
It's a feeling like no other for me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I had this one experience with a caterpillar, and it was just transformative, and I put it in my journal, but I think I'll always remember it. And it's even hard to explain because it was so simple. I looked closely at this patch of grass. My eyes tuned in, and there was a little caterpillar on the blade of grass, and I hadn't seen this type of caterpillar before, and it was so exquisitely tuned to its environment. It looked just like the blade of grass, and its little head was all furry and brown like a grass seed, and it was just completely perfectly designed for its environment. And it lifted up its head. It was late afternoon, and it lifted up its head, and it turned its head in this incredibly regal way. And just watching that little movement of a caterpillar's head completely sunk deeply into my soul. It's maybe sounds funny to hear, but to me, that moment with a caterpillar moving its head in this majestic way, it was just one of those moments that I'll remember always.
Oh, no, that sounds wonderful. And I understand exactly what you're saying. It's that thing, yeah, I get changing the nature mindset. Your mindset is the setup, and so you had this amazing experience from what someone else might just go, oh, caterpillar, yeah, I'm off,
Yes, I think that nature journaling trains you to see wonder in the everyday, and that is something pretty special.
Absolutely. I used to use the hashtag a lot, and nothing is ordinary. It's so true. It can be if you choose to see it in that way, but if you do just stop for a moment and look at the light under the leaves, suddenly everything changes, and you change, and you feel better.
Yeah, yeah.
As I said before, it's great for you. It's also great because every time you take a step forward, you're more likely to want to take an interaction to protect and save our amazing planet.
That is absolutely what it's about.
It's a sort of mutual coming together of everything, really.
I love talking with you because we can wax lyrical about how nature journaling can change the world, or that feeling like that it sinks deeply into you, and that feeling of wonder is what propels you to take environmentally responsible action in the future.
Absolutely. That was my hope through setting up Drawn into Nature. I didn't quite know. I didn't quite know exactly where it would lead, but I knew what I wanted to do and to sort of establish a kind of, I suppose, a community. I don't really know if that's the right word, but it's just something that people would actually know what that stood for and what I stood for and what was important to me. And if they had similar feelings, then I hope that we would come together. And that fortunately has happened with a lovely group of kind people that have supported what I'm doing. And now it's led to new opportunities to take that forward in things like meeting you in International Nature Journaling Week and other areas as well, and pushing that message out that we're never going to have millions of nature journalists probably, but we can have more. And if you want to get on board and involved, it is just the best thing to do, and in such a wonderful, warm, welcoming community. And there is so much help and advice out there, and it's good for you, good for the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I even got feedback from some people about International Nature Journaling Week website and all the prompts. And people said to me, I'm not a journaler, I'm not a drawer, and yet the website and the information has made me look at nature in a new way. And so even if that's all that happens, that's a beautiful thing that people can take forward.
Absolutely. I think, not everyone is going to feel the desire to pick up pen and paper, and that's fine if they've making that connection is more important. If you just want to come and look and admire and do it in that way, then that's absolutely great. It's still taking part in the engagement process, which is what it's all about.
Can you tell me a little bit about your process? So do you take your journal with you when you go out in nature, or do you just take notes and do it mostly at home, or do you take photographs? What's your process?
I'm going to say it's been a bit more mixed this year because of the situation that we've been in. But normally I take my journal out with me. So I need a very durable journal because they're always getting dropped in mud and goodness knows what else. And if it's really lovely, like today, we're in 28 degrees, very unusual. I might sit, and then I'll go to one of my sit spots, and I will start journaling, or something catches my eye on this particular thing. This year, because of the situation, I've not been able to do that so much. So I've had to do a lot of remembering. If I take photographs, I go out specifically and take photographs on a walk. I don't try and journal, because I find if I start taking photographs, I just get completely disassociated from the important part of why I'm there. So when I go out now, I don't take anything. I just think and remember and note if I can't take my journal with me, if there's nowhere that's going to be suitable and safe for me to stop, then this is interesting because it's made my brain work a bit differently, I think. And I have these sort of triggers that I get back, and then I make notes immediately about what I've seen and what I want to include. But my preference is always to go out and draw from life. I mean, that's always. Yeah. I'm not very good at drawing from photographs.
I love that you've got a mix of ways of doing it, and each is completely relevant, because I've heard people say, I've done this page, but I cheated because I did it inside. Or some people think that nature journaling from photographs or inside from memory or from notes isn't quite authentic or in some way cheating. But from the way you speak, I love that, because you do it in all different ways, and all of them are completely valid ways of connecting with nature.
Yeah, I would just say there's no right and wrong. There's no rules. It's what works for you.
There was a time for me when my son was really young, and I would take him out in nature, but journaling with a toddler or a baby in arms is very difficult. And so I would observe nature, and then all my nature journal pages in that stage of my life were done in the evening when he was asleep, from photographs or memories or photographs that I found. And I think there's just a multitude of ways to do it, and they're all valid.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think if people get sort of got hung up on things,
Yeah.
um, there shouldn't be rules. That's like some people will have adopt a more scientific bias. They're interested in gauging measurements, and they're interested in um, more in numbers. Perhaps somebody else might have a more poetical leaning and want to write poetry about them. That's the most wonderful thing about it.
Yeah.
You can do whatever it is you want to do, or you can
Yes.
mix it up. You could maybe one day you can get out and you want to do some field sketching, and then the next day it's raining and thunderstorm, and you stay indoors and you take your photographs and you study something else. But that's the thing. I think if you are going to use photographs and reference, the important thing I always think is, well, what did you find out? What did you learn?
Mm.
If you couldn't have
Mm-hmm.
first-hand contact today, what knowledge have you got? What's going on? Oh, I didn't know that about this particular creature, or oh, that's an amazing thing that flower does. So that again is really important. It's not no, it's not first-hand, but then hopefully the next day, oh, it's better weather today. Off I
Mm.
go. I'm going to my next door neighbour's garden. They're going to let me go and draw their apple tree and yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and you can get really connected with a species remotely. I had an experience where I got commissioned to draw some plants and animals for a rain garden in Oregon. And I hadn't seen the actual species, but I spent a lot of time studying them through photographs and reading about them in the process of producing these artworks for the signs that were to illustrate the rain garden. And now I feel really connected with the species. I've never seen them in person, and yet if I see them in passing in a guidebook or online, I'm thrilled because it's like an old friend that I've gotten to know just through this process. And I haven't seen them in real life, and I look forward to seeing them one day, but I do feel really connected to them.
I hope you do. I think that's a very good example, really, and we I don't think we can be too precious about it, it's particularly in these days, and not everyone is going to be living in a situation where they are able to just go out all the time. So if you can take the opportunity to learn and progress your knowledge and your drawing and painting skills that way, then that's great. It's just I would always say, whatever you do, always remember when there's an opportunity to go outside, there is nothing quite like it, and you will enjoy it so much. Particularly if you haven't been able to do it for quite some time, it might be a little bit. It can be a bit daunting. I think I always say to people, actually, if you're really nervous and you're just starting out in journaling, do something inside first. Because
Mm.
going outside, even if it's just in the garden, and you're new to drawing and you're new to everything, it's like whoa, it's just too much going on. So then collecting some nature finds is a really good way of actually starting off. So you feel by the time you go outside, oh, that's okay. Now I can it because it can be, as you know, it can be quite intimidating.
Yes, and getting the right kit and holding the kit in your hand or finding the right position to have everything.
Yeah.
Do you have a special outdoor sketching kit that you use, or do you have a really simple kit or something more complicated?
I have a very simple kit which I use for nature journaling and urban sketches, and it is just I love these mini palettes that people make. I do. I absolutely love them, but I don't have one of those. But I do have I had a little tiny, well, small metal palette that I use, which I just fill up with a very limited palette of about 8 or 9 different colours, and my beloved water brushes. I'm a water brush fanatic, but I love the Zig Kuretake brushes. They just suit my hand perfectly. I quite often pick
Oh,
them up
that's
instead of my regular brushes when I'm working inside. Um, Pencil. I use mechanical pencil, which I love because I always get the same balance in my hand. And oh yes, a putty eraser. I always
Mm-hmm.
have a pussy eraser.
I love that.
I know, I know that people say, "Oh, you shouldn't erase, you shouldn't." Well, I erase quite a lot. I often erase writing, and I often do lots and lots and lots of lines, and there's too many lines, but get rid of a few of those. And also, I tend to love to do a lot of shading and then taking out with putty rubber. So I always got that. And a pen, fountain pen, and like most or many urban sketches, I did sketch with my fountain pen, but I've never really taken to it. But I love to have one for writing. So that is pretty much my kit and my journal. I don't tend to have a lot of other things. I don't take loads of stuff out because I know what happens. I don't use it.
I wonder if you can explain a little bit about your patch. You've mentioned your patch a couple of times, and I'd like to hear all about it. What you see when you go outside, where you are.
Okay, so I have 3 patches normally, but this year I've been focusing on the nearest one. So I live northwest of Bristol in the UK, and behind where we live is the floodplain of the River Severn, which is a huge tidal river. And there is a big industrial estate, industrial port of Avonmouth, not very far away. So there's a lot of scrubland, motorways crossing, lots of industrial buildings a few miles hence. But this area is interesting because if you're in the UK, you will probably know about the Somerset Levels, which is a beautiful area of low-lying marshland in Somerset, crisscrossed with lots of ancient drainage ditches, reens, wildlife paradise, absolutely stunning place. Well, behind me is the last northern vestige of those levels. So over time, they've become isolated, but in fact, the landscape thousands of years ago was exactly the same as what is now a very, very popular tourist destination. Except ours isn't a very popular tourist destination because as I kind of come out and enter the site, I go onto what was for about 30 years a former landfill tip. So the area was originally a farm, right back from medieval times. And we still have the remains of the old apple orchards, which grew through the tip being there. This is way before before my time, with an incredible amount of apple trees, which have now been reclaimed, which is amazing. And it was obviously excellent pasture land at one time. And then about 1960s, it was flat land, industrial site, prime building for industrial estates, right? Great place for a tip. And so that was there until the 1980s, until there were some issues about health and safety, and local residents campaigned. So what they did then was create a little community farm, which is our little farm, which is wonderful.
Oh wow!
And the site literally went back to nature. Nothing was done to it. It was just, it's like scrubland where people might go and take their dogs for an afternoon's walkies to go to the toilet. We're talking motorbikers, litter, but actually people didn't go there because there's nothing there. And nature says, "Wow, this is brilliant." And of course, she takes over, and so now it's turned into this amazing, almost wildlife reserve, really, with so many species. And because of the tip and because of its proximity to the motorway, I think probably a lot of introduced species have found their way there. So we have now, we have lots of roe deer, foxes, rabbits, squirrels. We have the badgers come down occasionally from the woods on the hill.
Wow.
Incredible amount of wildflowers. When you consider what they're growing on, very diverse. It's a dragonfly haven because we have these ancient reens. One of them is medieval, and they crisscross. But of course, it's perfect. And we even have the British water vole, the famous ratty of Wind in the Willows.
Oh wow!
Now an endangered species, which I never thought I would live to see. And I think I'm right in saying we are the only place in the whole area where we have a community of water voles living.
That's amazing.
And opossums. It's just incredible. But most people would kind of look at the entrance with a big, iron gate and one of those big concrete circular tube things and some graffiti on it and think, oh, not going down there. And I remember my partner saying, oh, I don't you going down there. So of course I disregarded that. And found this wildlife paradise.
That's amazing. Well, that's description just takes me there. And I do actually know your patch a little bit through your nature journals. And I love seeing foxes turn up on your pages and rabbits, and how exciting to see a badger. That just blows my mind. It's so, so special.
It is lovely, but I like it because people are always really surprised. And I've taken people for walks there, and they've been shocked because they had no idea what it was.
How diverse it
I mean,
is.
there's still litter and and dog mess and goodness, because that's going to happen. But you get off into little paths and things, and it's just it's amazing, and it just shows you nature on the doorstep. Nature draws a vacuum, and as soon as there is one, she's in there and she's creating more beauty and wonder. And I'm incredibly lucky to have this, literally 2 minutes from my doorstep.
I hope you enjoyed this interview. To find more about Jules and her work, you can find her online at drawnintonature.com and at Drawn Into Nature on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. See you next week.